to the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
Now let's do this.
It's just two men cheating the system by actually getting paid to talk sports.
You volunteered, didn't you? We're paying you, aren't we?
Good thing they like being heard, because we don't pay them that much.
It's like people only do things because they get paid, and that's just really sad.
The first of the duo is never shy about letting you know where he stands.
Okay, hot take, but I like your confidence.
The other promises he'll grow on you with time.
It's like a new pair of underwear. At first it's constrictive, but after a while it becomes a part of you.
Together, they're bringing you the best in Oklahoma State sports talk and their opinions on sports topics from around the country.
That's right. Listen up. Hey, listen up. You.
Patrick Wheeler.
Let's stomp these dudes.
And Zach Lancaster.
Everyone is stupid except me.
This is the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
That's what I'm talking about. Sport.
You ain't never heard nothing like this. Let me work. Show me where the mic is. I'm on stage, black shirt and my Timbs. You know how I do it. I ain't playing with you. I've been grinding. Anybody trying to sleep on me, better do something with your eyelids. I hear a lot of whining, but I don't hear a lot of rhyming. Whoa! Everybody got opinions. Let it go into my ear, then I block that. Put me on stage, I'ma rock that. Saying you the best. Stop that, phony. I am not that. Yeah. What are y'all doing out here? What are y'all doing out here? Maybe you should spend a little less time with the women on your arms and a little bit more with your career. I ain't saying I'm the best, but I should be in the top 10. Give me a list of names. I'ma top them. I'm just playing with you. I don't care what the top is. Leave me at the bottom. Let me work for it.
Welcome in Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler hanging out, and Zach Lancaster.
What up?
Show today brought to you by Pride Travel Plaza in Perkins on the intersection of highways 177 and 33. They are open until 11 o'clock tonight. Go in, make sure you hit up that awesome deli they have. A ton of lunch and dinner favorites going on right now that you can get going on there. Deli sandwiches, chicken strips, straight off the grill, burgers, pizza, BLTs, and all the sides you could want as well. Big, clean restrooms, a perfect stop on your way home or to pick up an easy meal. Go check them out, Pride Travel Plaza. Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster hanging out today. A lot of good stuff to get to. Good show coming up here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. We have Frank Bonner joining at 3:25. Going to get in with him on some Oklahoma State football and basketball action as we continue on here on this another snowy day, Zach. It's coming down again.
It's I don't mind it. You know, we haven't had a good actual snow in a long time, and hopefully people are staying safe. Hopefully people are staying warm and dry. But this is almost kind of like what people needed. You know, we're starting to get the COVID vaccine, and all of a sudden we're getting beautiful snow, and it feels like Christmas and wintertime, and so this is a nice little alleviation from all the BS we've been dealing with the past 10 months.
Yeah, it's been a lot of BS, that's for sure.
No doubt.
So I wanted to take a look because we're going to get with Frank here in a little bit and talk more about it. And of course, we got to speak to Joe Lunardi yesterday about Oklahoma State basketball, which was great. He had a really, a lot of good insight. As said today, the latest projections that brought out the newest bracket has Oklahoma State basketball currently at a 10 seed. Which I personally think could be really, really dangerous for any team that were to match up with them at that spot based on the way they've been playing. So, and then we'll get more into Oklahoma State basketball later on the show, too, because the Marquette win keeps getting better and better. So that's something that looks really good. But we didn't really get to talk too much about the game that happened over the weekend with Wichita State. And, that game was definitely, when you look at all of the non-conference matchups, you thought that probably going in Marquette would end up giving them the biggest challenge, but we haven't seen still probably to this point a defensive performance like that from Oklahoma State. I mean, they just locked it down in that game in particular. But Wichita State, I honestly think a lot of people were counting them out this year because of the Greg Marshall situation. Nobody really knew what this team had to offer. There were a lot of names that weren't there this year that were originally there with Marshall. What impact did he really have negatively over the entire program? And would their interim, or their guy, I should say, that stepped in, be able to kind of keep Wichita State and at least get them back on track? It's not like they were dominant last year by any means, but like they used to be. But still a competitive ball club, and as Joe pointed out yesterday, another win on the road is really good. And Oklahoma State comes in with that one. Wichita State's hanging. I mean, the entire time. There were a couple times in the second half where Oklahoma State was really close, I thought, to pulling away when they were up 5, or I think they were even up 7 at one point, maybe. It was somewhere around there, and it looked like, okay, they were about to pull away and take off with this game. It was also strange to watch because for the most part in that game, first half and certainly the second half, you're sitting there watching Cade not score. And you're thinking, okay, well, we all know, we've said it a bunch of times, even when that's not the case and he's not scoring, we have so many talented players on this squad that they're able to make up for that. But this was a little different than what we've seen so far this season, because has he quietly put in a lot of points at times? Yes, for sure. But this one was a really loud silence, because we could notice right away, okay, this is continuing here into the second half, and all of a sudden Cade's not even getting a shot attempt up, and what's going on. So I give credit to Wichita State for finding a way to try and limit him, and they did, and try and shut him down for the most part. And I think a lot of different teams are taking a look at that film and saying, all right, what exactly did Wichita State do? Because yes, they ultimately got beat by Cade Cunningham, but what they did for the most part of the game, we need to replicate that. Now, that being said, Cade comes in at the very end of that ball game, and we all know where the ball's going. We all know he's going to get that touch, and man, did he look as confident as I've seen any player look in a very, very long time. And this is a freshman we're talking about. He looked like he had the poise of a fifth-year senior out there with the ball in his hands, knowing I have a good chance of putting it in the basket, ice in my veins type situation where I'm going to drill the three and it's going to be over. And it was one of those situations too where you could see he was like, even the defenders probably know that this is about to happen, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's where I think you get that really unique and rare confidence level from some players. And it just so happens that Cade Cunningham is one of those guys. As well as for Wichita State, you knew that Dexter Dennis was going to probably be his toughest matchup defensively this season, and he ultimately gets that last shot up over him, and as we talked about, knocked it down. So he was there when it mattered most. You can look at the entirety of that ball game. You can say, yeah, he only scored this amount of points, wasn't a huge game, but man, he was there when it mattered most, and I think everybody was really, really confident when he got that ball in his hands, and man, he looked like it too when he drilled that three.
Yeah, and that was actually going to be one of my buy or sells yesterday. Are we going to, is that the last game winner we're going to see from Cade this year? And there's just no way. I mean, I'm not saying that he's going to go out and and nail 15 game winners this season, because obviously Big 12 play is much different than non-conference. We heard that yesterday from Joe Lenardi. Oklahoma State didn't go out and play any world beaters. Marquette was a tough challenge. They really pulled away there late in the second half, and like you said, that Marquette game is still paying dividends. We'll get into more of that later, but you look at Cade and yeah, okay, so he finishes with 10 points, which is, most players would love to have 10 points, but when you're looking at Cade and, on any given night, he's anywhere between 18 and 30, 10 is a little pedestrian. He goes 4 of 11 from the field, 2 of 4 from 3-point range. But Cade is a guy that can turn it on at any given time, and that's something that we've seen so far this year. That's something that we're going to continue to see. And I think that, and we've talked about it at multiple times, and Lenardi brought it up yesterday. This is a relatively young team. Most of the guys on the roster that are playing a good amount of minutes, you're looking at, a good amount of freshmen, Matthew Alexander-Moncrief, Cunningham. Even though Cade is really good, he's still a freshman. He's still trying to figure out this level. Rondell Walker, You even go to the sophomores, you look at Caleb and Keelan Boone, Avery Anderson, those guys are young and still really trying to figure it out, because other than Avery, Caleb didn't play a ton of minutes last year. You look at Keelan, and Keelan played virtually no minutes last year. So those guys are still really trying to figure it out. Avery played a lot last year, but when you have Ice and Cunningham on the floor, Avery's going to take that back seat, as we saw, played 11 minutes. And it was a road game. I talking to Tom, I get these arenas are empty. It's there's not a lot of fans, or it's empty, and you have the opposing team, but it doesn't matter. You're still playing on the road. Playing at home in front of a few thousand is still a hell of a lot easier than going and playing on the road in an empty arena, because it's not your bed, it's not your locker room, it's not your routine. And so Wichita State's not great, but I think that was a good solid win, especially going into conference play. You got a difficult TCU team coming into Stillwater on Wednesday. For those of you that might not know, tip-off has been changed. It's 6 p.m. on ESPN instead of 8 on ESPN2. So really looking forward to that. I love 6 p.m. games. But when you can start the season 6-0, and there's some pretty tough wins for this young team. You beat a difficult Texas State team at home, or a Texas Southern team, excuse me, and you beat a difficult. You beat a tough UTA team on the road to start the season. You go up to Marquette. That was a tough game. You go to Wichita State. That was tough. ORU proved to be tough. Even though they lost a lot of games, Oakland proved to be tough. And I think that's a big note right there that we need to talk about. Wichita State was 5 of 26 from 3-point range. Now, they scored all their buckets at the free throw line, and they scored all their buckets from the field. But when you're giving up, career highs in Gallagher-Iba to an opponent, night in and night out, and you hold someone to just 5 of 26 from the 3-point range, I think that's a good little boost right there, especially going into conference play.
Well, and yeah, like you mentioned there with the non-conference schedule, what's so great about it is the fact that, hey, these were not easy walkover games. Mm-hmm. And, when you get some teams with non-conference schedules, is it super easy to, look at some of their matchups and say, wow, they really didn't have a lot of competition? Yeah, it really is sometimes. But, man, Oklahoma State ultimately does what you would really expect of them, and they go 6-0. But on top of that, every matchup, as you mentioned, was a challenge, and it was a learning experience for this team. And we're going to be looking back at the end of this year saying, hey, remember that non-conference schedule when Oakland couldn't miss from 3? Remember that game with Oral Roberts when they couldn't miss from 3? I remember Wichita State came down to the last second. All that has gotten Oklahoma State where they are, and I hope that's what we're going to be talking about, because they're going to be able to build off this so much. So while you went 6-0, and that's big time, the lessons you've learned as a young team, and I truly believe Mike Boynton and the coaching staff has done the exact same thing I'm talking about here, and used all of this as learning tools and saying, hey, we can only get better from here. And that's something that's invaluable, because a lot of times, you get some really good teams with really good coaching staffs. We know on purpose, yes, you're going to schedule squads that are beatable for the non-conference for the most part, but at the same time, you like to schedule squads that will give you a challenge. You don't want this walkover schedule like Joe mentioned with Arkansas yesterday, for instance. Is a good example. But I thought it played out really well. And yeah, I limit the excitement at times. I don't want people to look into this and go, oh my gosh, 6-0, man. I mean, we're on the way, like take it easy. Let's get into some Big 12 play. But as I've said from the beginning with this team, I think it is fair to be really excited about where this team is headed, because they are growing with each and every game. And the Big 12 play starting tomorrow, TCU, that's a great test. I mean, you're going to get hit early on, and it doesn't stop from there, right? This isn't this is a normal season where you're going to be able to get a lot more non-conference scheduled, games in, and you're going to be able to get some exhibitions in. Now you're getting thrust in the fire, here on December 15th, and it's Big 12 play, and you got to have your best, because any Big 12 team, maybe minus like Kansas State this year because they're just next level bad, but any Big 12 team at any time can beat anybody. That's just how it is in this league. I know there's if you look at the record, it's kind of top heavy, but don't be fooled. There are teams, if you put Oklahoma State up there against even a Texas right now, possibly a West Virginia or a Texas Tech, am I saying they'd necessarily win? No, but I'm thinking they would give them a fight. This is a legitimate squad, and Oklahoma State is rounding into form here a little bit, even though it's early on. So it's exciting to see. I love the best thing about this team to me is that you can get the production from all over the place. It's never going to be one singular area where you're worrying about, okay, he's the only one scoring tonight. No, you're going to get guys that are going to put the ball in the hoop from all over. It may be a different guy every night, and guess what? You're okay with that too, because with guys like Cade, with guys like Ice, and heck, Rondell Walker this year deciding to just turn it on, which is a awesome surprise, I think, for a lot of people with the amount of production he's given. It's like we know those guys are going to get theirs. Mm-hmm. And while Cade, yes, he only put up 10 points, and that's not a stat stuffer by any means. Guess what? They were big 10 points, man. And, 3 of them were the reason they won that game at the end. So it's always going to be super important, obviously, when he has the ball in his hands and when he's making plays. I expect him, when Big 12 play starts here, to get off to a lot quicker starts in ball games as well. And I just think the ceiling for this Oklahoma State team keeps rising. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and he's going to have to get off to hot starts,
Yeah.
And learning experiences, I think, is the biggest thing you can take away, because, I get that Cade played at a really high level. He probably played at the highest level in the country, and a good amount of the guys he went up against are playing major Division I basketball. But when you look at the younger guys, and I'll even put Cade in there as well, when you get a guy that there aren't many opportunities to go up against someone that just can't miss, that gets hot and stays hot through an entire game. You look at Oakland, you look at ORU, Marquette to an extent, Texas Southern in high school. That doesn't happen, not at certain levels, because when a guy hits a couple of threes and you go down and you hit a three or you get a big dunk or whatever, the momentum changes, and you're not going to get a guy scoring 34, 35 points consistently on you. And so you look at these, the first 6 games, there was a guy in every single game. It wasn't from outside, but you look at Wichita State, and you had a guy in Tyson Etienne putting up 19. That's a good amount of points. So each of these games, there's been a challenge and something for them to learn from. Now, they still need to figure out turnovers. They had 15 turnovers against Wichita State, forced only 12. So that's something that they're going to have to figure out. But, it was a little bit less than what they had the game before. So that's going to be an issue, but they're going to need Cade to turn it on from the bat. I love the fact that Cade distributes. He tries to find opportunities for his guys to start the game. But that when you're every single night playing one of the best teams in the country, that's not going to do it.
Get him on Twitter at ZLancaster91. I'm at the Patty Wheels. Show today brought to you by Ampride Travel Plaza in Perkins, the intersection of highways 177 and 33. Go check them out. Tim Fox and the friendly folks there want to say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everybody out there. We come back on the afternoon sports drive. Frank Bonner from the Tulsa World's going to join us. It's next.
Yeah, run it back, tell them what I'm coming at. I was on the hit there, now I'm done with that. Scared of what I didn't want, scared of what I wanted, and thought that I was finished, but I hardly had begun. In fact, I'm a beast, I'm a monster, a savage, and any other metaphor the culture can imagine. And I got
Welcome back into the afternoon sports drive here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Show today brought to you by Ampride Travel Plaza in Perkins, intersection of highways 177 and 33. Also, easy on the way home pickup of your favorite ice cold beers. Really huge selection of wines there as well. It's also a really good and easy idea for the wine drinker on your Christmas list. Go grab whatever they like there. It's easy to find at Ampride Travel Plaza. Join us now, as always, on Tuesdays is Frank Bonner from the Tulsa World. Frank, what's going on today, man?
Going well. enjoying some of this snow that I didn't think I'd ever get being out here in Oklahoma, but it is what it is, I guess.
Well,
you need to make the most of it because this is the last little bit you're going to get.
Yeah, it's that's true. It's not going to stay that long, and it's truly Oklahoma because you know that you're going to turn around and get like 50-degree weather and sunny skies in the next couple of days and stuff like that. So it won't last long like up in the Northeast, that's for sure.
Well, I won't be complaining about that part. I'm looking forward to that part of it.
Yeah, man, no doubt. It is. It's been coming down all day, so I'm with you on that too. Hey, I wanted to take a look a little bit at Oklahoma State with Baylor. Now, obviously, this was a game where it wasn't even close from the start, but it's always nice to see, even with the way Oklahoma State's season has gone, right? It's got to be nice to see OSU put a beat down on Baylor to end the season, right?
Yeah, and I think it was. I know every week you kind of ask me about, Sanders, and I know he had that one interception where he made a bad pass. But I mean, other than that, I thought he played pretty solid. Even the jump ball intersection, I kind of agree with Gundy on. You throw those up, you just expect to win those, and they didn't win that one. But all in all, I think it was pretty encouraging for that offense. Looking at the type of year they had. Have you ever seen Charlie Brewer and that Baylor offense look as lost as they did that entire game? Yeah, what was that about? Like, I thought Charlie Brewer would come in and have a pretty decent game against OSU. I did think OSU was going to win the game, but he just didn't look like previous versions of himself, and I don't know, is that more so because the OSU defense just gave him so much problems, or was it, partly the fact that he just wasn't on it that day? Yeah, no, he was. I think he was confused, but as well as if you look, back at that game, the coverage was really good. You mix that in with the fact that he doesn't have a ton of playmakers to begin with, and it was just a really perfect storm for him to not succeed. But I'm like you, I didn't expect it to be at that level because that was kind of next level bad for him. So for Oklahoma State, what'd you think of Dylan Stoner just kind of coming out saying, "Hey, I'm just going to play out of my mind today"? Yeah, I was happy for him. I know we've had a couple of conversations about because Tylan Wallace is so good, and he's obviously been their first option all year, that sometimes Dylan Stoner can get lost in the shuffle, and he may not get some of the looks that we, at least me personally, I think he should get. It was nice to see him end his regular season on such a high note with 247 yards, and he had a career day, and it was good to see because he's just been a blue collar, everyday hard nosed working guy, and it's good to see players like that have that type of experience. If he attempts the NFL, do you think he would make it on a team, whether it be a practice squad or something like that by chance? Man, you just never know. I think he has a shot. I do think he has a shot at being on a practice squad. But that type of stuff is so. If you're not like a shoe-in like a Tylan Wallace type of deal, you never know with that. But I do think he owes it to himself to at least give himself a shot. Yeah. No, I would agree with that, too. It's exactly what I thought the other day when they talked about that. Frank Bonner from the Tulsa World joining us here on the afternoon sports drive. We saw Dominic Richardson also have a huge game as well on the ground, his kind of coming out party like we saw just a few weeks before. Is it safe to say that the future is bright for the running back position at Oklahoma State? Yeah, I wrote about this a couple days ago, and I think that was like the exact headline that I had used. And I likened it to when Justice Hill was leaving. He got hurt, and Hubbard had those last 4 games where you kind of saw what the future was for him. And then that following year, Hubbard leads the nation in rushing. I think you kind of see a similar thing here. Hubbard is hurt. Jackson gets his shot and he has a breakaway game. Now Richardson gets his shot and has a breakaway game. I think OSU fans can kind of, peep into the future a little bit and see, okay, that backfield is still going to be solid, even though we're losing Hubbard and most likely L.D. Brown. So you mentioned, Spencer Sanders' performance, and I'm kind of like you. I thought it was overall pretty good, minus the 2 picks, and one of them was, like you said, the deep ball there. Wasn't necessarily 100% on him. But with that being said and what he put on the performance there with Baylor,
Do you expect a real-time quarterback battle this spring between him and Shane?
On the practice field, it's like if I'm Gundy, I would make it one. I don't expect him to lose his job. I do think he's going to be the starter next year, but I do think there's going to be some type of battle, because if I'm the coaching staff, I think it's beneficial for Sanders to kind of find himself in that battle, to kind of force his hand on fixing some mistakes that, he still needs to fix. And so I think it would be healthy for both of them to find themselves in a quarterback battle. And I think ultimately, Sanders would keep the job, but I think it'll put a little bit more pressure on him to fix some things if he's got somebody, pushing him to do that. Yeah,
it's a classic possibly competition breeds success type situation there. So we saw this week as well, Rodarius opting out, Chuba on top of that too. Will we hear, in your opinion here, from Tylen about doing the same thing anytime soon?
You know what, I think we may hear like a day of, kind of like how we heard from Chuba. It was, Gundy kind of said it in the pregame radio and kind of confirmed it for everybody, and then we heard from Hubbard left. If we hear anything about Tylen, it would be similar to that. I think we do hear that he doesn't play, but it won't be until, a day or even less than that before the bowl game.
Okay. So let's take a look at Oklahoma State basketball here, flip it over real quick. We saw Cade really dominate against Oral Roberts, and then there wasn't much going on for him against Wichita State until the end there when he hit that big shot. But in that game, was there ever any doubt that he would get that last shot?
So I was covering obviously I was covering the football, so I didn't actually watch the game while it was live, but going back and looking at it, no, I mean, I don't care, what type of first half or whatever he was having. I mean, that's why you got him. You got him to make those plays, and he showed you that he could make those plays. And so I don't think there was ever any doubt that that's who you were going to go to. And I think it was good for him to work through that, being young, because you're going to have, I mean, whether you're a star player or not, you're going to have games that are kind of rough for you, individually, and you have to figure out how to work through that and still, help your team get a win. And he did that. And so I think that was a really good experience for him to go through, and then to end it with the go-ahead bucket.
Frank Bonner here on the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. So how big of a spark was it, do you think, for Oklahoma State to get Avery Anderson back out there on the floor?
I think it was big, especially defensively. Avery Anderson, I think he's shown that he can be a pretty solid on-ball defender. They've got some really good point guards who can defend, and Avery is one of them. Obviously, Chris Harris, Isaac Likely is another. And so I think that was big to get that defensive spark for them back on the court, and mix some things up for them. And I think he's gonna be really solid for them from a defensive standpoint.
So Mike Boynton had said before the game that there would be a lineup change, but were you surprised it was Kuma who got the start there?
Completely surprised. I wouldn't have called that, ever that he would make that switch. And like I said, I didn't get to see how they started. Those first few minutes or so. I don't know what type of difference it made in terms of the flow of what rhythm they got in. But we've seen this before from Boynton. If you look at last year, how many times he played with the lineup, and so that's not out of character for him to do that, but I just didn't see him making that specific change at all.
Yeah, you can tell that they're still really looking, and we knew this was going to be the main focus and possibly the main issue coming into the season. They're still looking for that guy that can step in and be a disruptor with that size and then rebound and do the little things. But it's been tough, I think, for Kuma so far. He's dealt with foul trouble. That's something that he hasn't avoided yet. But I'm with you. I was really shocked when he was out there. And Tom Dorado was on with us earlier and said that might still be the case against TCU. So we'll have to see. Joe Lunardi was on with us yesterday on the show, and he told us that Oklahoma State is currently a 10 seed in the latest bracket that they have put out. Could you see them slotting in around there and maybe being pretty dangerous at that spot in the tournament?
Yeah, I do. And here's why. Because you've got so much competition in this Big 12 that you've got a lot of opportunities to get some quality wins. And what that's going to do is, if you can get some of those wins, it's going to give this young group a lot of confidence. And confidence breeds a mentality where you start playing better. And I think they're a team. When you're as young as they are, if you're playing well towards the end of the year, then you can get really hot. And then, you have the X factor in Cade Cunningham to kind of close it out for you. And so I do think they could be a dangerous team as we get, towards the end of the year.
Yeah, for sure. I always thought that too. When I hear about those 10, when you look back at some of the tournaments, look at some of those 8, 9, 10 teams, you're like, oh man, that's not a bad spot to actually be in.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean we've seen that over and over. Is it safe to say that the Marquette win continues to look better and better? I mean, after they beat 2 top 10 teams now in Wisconsin and Creighton.
Yeah, I mean that Marquette win. We'll see, as we get deeper into the season, what Marquette ends up looking like in terms of national relevance and things. But right now, it does look really good. And if you're in that locker room, I mean, you're not necessarily looking at old wins like that, but it gives you confidence to see that we beat a team that's out here beating other, top-notch teams, and like we just talked about, gives you confidence. And so I think it's huge for them from a seeding standpoint, but it's also huge for them from a confidence standpoint. You can beat teams that are competing at a high level.
Frank Bonner joining us here on the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. It was something that Zach and I opened with was maybe the biggest takeaway from coming out 6-0 out of non-conference play is that you didn't really have any of those games necessarily were just handed to you. Like you see sometimes in non-conference matchups. They were all tests, I think, for Oklahoma State, and they passed, but they learned a lot from them. Is it possible to you that, depending on where this team ends up, and let's hope they end up in the tournament, obviously, and have a successful season in the Big 12, can they look back on some of these games and even point out the Oakland matchup, Oral Roberts and Wichita State, and say, hey, and Marquette, obviously, those teams that we played right there, they made us kind of what we are today.
Yeah, and I think Boynton he kind of talked about that in real time. It was after one of the early games, and I asked him, what's the benefit of being able to see your team close out a close win this early? And he said, he would prefer, with the young team that he has, he would prefer those close games. And so it gives him an opportunity to be like, yeah, I know we won the game, but look at everything that we did wrong that we need to get better. And he said, it's kind of hard to do that when you're winning by 30-plus points to get, young guys to hone in on what they need to work on. But when you're coming out of some of these games by the skin of your teeth, everybody's going into that next practice looking to get better because you barely survived. And so, if you go into practices and, outside of games with that mindset, you're only going to get better week by week. And I think, we're kind of seeing that with OSU, and we'll see how that plays out in the conference.
As far as player-wise, did you expect to see as much as we've already seen out of Rondell Walker this year?
No, I did not. He is a surprise for me. Not saying that I didn't think, he would contribute at all or anything, but I didn't think that he would be contributing at the level that he is as early as he is. Right off the bat, he's, their biggest, spark plug off the bench. And I like that. I like his, when you talk about Boynton and the type of players that he recruits, I think Rondell Walker is like your typical, like, Mike Boynton guy. I mean, he gets in, he comes on the floor. He's committed defensively.
Yep.
He plays with nothing but heart on that end of the floor. He's a guy who you don't necessarily need to score all the time, but he knows how to, put up points and pick his spots when things are open for him. I think that's the type of grittiness that Boynton looks for when he recruits his guys, and Rondell Walker is perfect for this system.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on with that. So TCU tomorrow, the opening of Big 12 play. How are you feeling about that matchup?
I think OSU is gonna win that matchup. I think Cade, this is conference play, and Cade, although he doesn't get wrapped up into any of the hype and all that, he's pretty level-headed. He also knows how to turn things on when they need it. And I think you're going to see Cade play well. And I think you're going to see Isaac Likely, who's their veteran. He's going to come into this, first conference game knowing what happened to them last year after they had a hot start. So, they may not talk about it a whole lot, but I know for, Isaac, that may be in the back of his head, making sure he lets his team get off on a good foot. And so I think they're going to come out focused and prepared, and they're going to leave with a win.
Last thing for you here, we're talking about Cade. And then we looked at that Wichita State game, and we know it was a slow game for the most part, at least scoring-wise, until the end. Does he have to get out to quicker starts to you for this team to stay successful in the Big 12?
I think yes. At a certain point, yes. Early on this non-conference schedule, not so much, obviously, because he can kind of get into the flow of things and pick it up in the second half. But when you're going against some of these teams in the Big 12, they're going to need Cade to get off to a great start in order to keep them close enough to still be in it. By halftime. If you can't be going up against Baylor and Kansas and Texas and not have Cade get off on a good foot and think you're still going to be in the game by halftime. And so I do think that he needs to have better starts. And I think he will, right? I mean, he's still only 19 years old, 6 games into his college season. I think as he continues to get more comfortable, he'll come into games and he'll have better starts. But this is what happens with young teams, right? Young teams, they have slow starts. Some young teams don't finish well. At least this young team finishes well. I mean, if you're the coaching staff, you prefer to have a team that finishes and opens well. But if you had to pick between the two, you choose the team that has a slow start but finishes strong.
That's Frank Bonner from the Tulsa World, covers Oklahoma State. You can follow him on Twitter at Frank_Bonner too. Frank, thanks so much for your time as always, man. Hopefully when we talk to you next week, there's a little less snow on the ground.
Yeah, all right. I'll be looking forward to it.
All right, man. Appreciate it. Frank Bonner. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at Frank_Bonner too. A lot of good stuff from him as always. Check out the work he does covering Oklahoma State there for the Tulsa World. Show today brought to you by Ampride Travel Plaza here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. When we come back, we'll round out hour number 1. And Zach and I will take a closer look at TCU a little bit coming up here with Oklahoma State. That's tomorrow. And then as well, we will have Buy or Sell in hour number 2. Maybe, I think it's safe to say, the best and the craziest NFL game of the season happened last night for a lot of different reasons. We'll get into that. Much more on the Afternoon Sports Drive here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
Whoa. Staring as I go, I gave until my soul hurt, never told them so. They're watching as I fall, somewhere down below. Maybe I'm just falling to get somewhere they won't.
Welcome back to the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. It's Tuesday afternoon. Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster. Show brought to you by Ampride Travel Plaza and Perkins on the intersections of highways 177 and 33. 24-hour pay at the pump, Cinex top-tier gasoline, and a big, fresh deli menu with a ton of good stuff for lunch and dinner. Chicken strips straight off the grill, burgers, pizza, deli sandwiches, BLTs, french fries, everything you want. Go get some dinner on this cold Tuesday afternoon. Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster. Hey, Zach, one thing I thought was spot on there from Frank is his description with Rondell Walker. I mean, he's right. That is your prototypical Mike Boynton-style player right there who is going to go hard on the offensive end, but even harder on the defensive end.
There's no doubt. And that's something you and I talked about yesterday. How many freshmen, it's not even freshmen, like how many freshmen and sophomores in this country play as hard on the defensive end as they do on the offensive end, and maybe a little bit harder on the defensive end than the offensive end. And Rondell is really good on the offensive end.
Yeah.
I mean he's putting up 12 plus points a game. You go back to the box score against Wichita State, and he put up 13 points. So it's Rondell, and I think we all knew Rondell was going to end up playing well, having a decent career for Oklahoma State. I don't think anyone expected him to be, lights out spectacular, especially not this first year. But, I mean, he's a top 100 player, a top 150 player across all recruiting sites, and that's a pretty good reason.
Yeah.
And I think he's a top 60 ESPN prospect. I certainly expected him to have a decent Oklahoma State career, but and I've said it, and I'll continue to say it. I think Matthew Alexander Moncrief is probably gonna end up being the best signing of the 2020 class. Cade is hands down the best overall player this year, and will most likely go number one, if not top 3 in the NBA draft in 21. But Rondell Walker, man, he is making himself a case to challenge MA for one of the best careers of that signing class.
Yeah, they're both really, really fun to watch, that's for sure. You throw that in with Cade and Ice, and man, there's just a lot of spots to look at on this team, that's for sure. So OSU football, in OSU sports too, it's a big day tomorrow. We got signing day, and you have a lot of coverage coming up on that, Zach.
Yeah, absolutely. So signing the prospects, recruits, commits, whoever, they can officially sign with Oklahoma State at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning Central Time, and that's when our coverage starts on pokesreport.com. We're going to be we have easily the most extensive recruiting profiles on all the commits, and as soon as we get word that a kid's LOI has been received by Oklahoma State, we're going to put that profile up on pokesreport.com. Marshall Levinson and Robert Allen, they are going to be at close to 15 signings tomorrow, down in Texas and up here in Oklahoma. So we're going to have exclusive content from those signees. It's going to be a big day, and not just that, but we're going to have a ton of other premium insight and premium content that you won't find anywhere else. And honestly, you won't find most of what we're going to be putting up anywhere else. Robert and Marshall, Marshall's our recruiting director. Those two guys they go harder than anyone else covering Oklahoma State. So our recruiting coverage, and I'm not just saying that because I need money. But it's true. You go back to last year and you go back to the year before that when we were on different platforms, and you won't find better coverage. You didn't find better coverage anywhere else. And that just continued with pokesreport.com. And we actually, this platform allows us to do a little bit more. And you're not going to want to miss out on our premium content. We've got a great deal going on right now. You can get 2 months. You get this month and you get January leading up to the February signing period for just $9.99. You can go to pokesreport.com and you can click our premium tab at the top, or you can go to pokesreport.com/subscribe. Marshall Levinson and myself, we also have, we've got those links up on our Twitter accounts. I would say 85 to 90% of all of our content is free. But we have some of the best premium content, and we're for sure is going to have the best recruiting signing day premium coverage. So again, that's pokesreport.com/subscribe, or you can just go to pokesreport.com and click our premium tab there at the top of the page. And again, that coverage of signing day for us starts at 6 a.m.
There you go. Should be good stuff. Make sure you check that out. Show today brought to you by Amp Pride Travel Plaza and Perkins of the intersections of Highways 177 and 33. When we come back here on the Afternoon Sports Drive, hour number 2 right around the corner. Buy or sell coming up. Crazy NFL game happening last night, and a lot more coming your way. News as well on the scary situation involving a Florida basketball player. We'll update you on all that. Still to come here on the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network after this.
I don't know how we make it out when we make that on the low. Even if it rains, you'd rather make it snow. Both you and me know we gotta let it go. Laying on the ground, wondering why it's so cold. How we make it out when we make out on the low. Even if it rains, you'd rather make it snow. Both you and me know we gotta let it go.
hour number 2 of the afternoon sports drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster on this Tuesday. We keep rocking and rolling. Got a lot to get to this hour because it was a big sports weekend, a big sports night. We continue on. I love this time of year because you've still got the NFL going. You got college football, games obviously still going. You got college basketball getting into the thick of it. Conference plays is around the corner now this year. Man, it's a good time to be a sports fan right now. We can't wait to get into some of the games that have happened recently, and obviously tomorrow be sure to remember, Zach said, tip-off for Oklahoma State basketball moved up to 6 o'clock on ESPN against TCU, so everybody should be able to watch that game. I know it's obviously much easier than having to subscribe, for instance, to like the ESPN Plus, which some of the games were on earlier. So this will be available for everybody to see. Show today brought to you by Pride Travel Plaza in Perkins, intersections of highways 177 and 33. Go check them out. All the hot, fresh food you could want. It's perfect time. Snowy, cold day. Go get some hot, fresh deli food there at Pride Travel Plaza. Kicking off hour number 2, we're going to get into it.
Are you buying?
I'd buy that for $1.
Or are you selling?
You'll pick up the phone and you'll sell.
This is Buy or Sell on the Afternoon Sports Drive.
Make money, make money.
Buy or Sell Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster. All right, Zach. So I can't remember. Did I start off yesterday? I can't even remember. I did. Okay. All right. So that means you're up first.
That's right. So Marquette, you talked about it a little bit with Frank. Marquette knocked off number 4 Wisconsin earlier this year, and they knocked off number 9 Creighton on the road, mind you.
Yeah.
Last night, a Creighton team that escaped with a win over Kansas. Now Kansas isn't great, but Kansas is still pretty good. I'm kind of like Lenardi. I'm going to ride Kansas until I can't anymore. Marquette continues to be a really good win for Oklahoma State. Does it continue further past tonight to be a really good win for Oklahoma State? Buy or sell?
That's a really impressive win, actually, over a really good Creighton team from Marquette. And, they had already taken care of business against a good Wisconsin team. Speaking of Creighton, were you a big Doug McDermott fan, or were you like, he's all right?
I mean, he was good, but he's the kind of guy that is just like, it is what it is.
Yeah. I always really liked Dougie McBuckets. I mean, he was, for the nickname's awesome. And I always liked him. And because it was so, like, he was one of those guys that could dominate in college basketball because he was a really, really good shooter. I mean, he could take it to the hole, too, but he was a really good shooter. But it never, we've seen that with a lot of guys that dominate in college basketball sometimes. It never translated to the next level. And he played with the Bulls, and it just never quite kicked off for him all that much. And I've seen that multiple times with guys, but it's funny because he was one of the most, when I think, recent dominant college basketball players, he's got to go on the list there from Creighton. He was fun to watch. So, getting off on that a bit aside there. But, no,
Patrick, buy or
I know.
sell.
That was the question. The question was buy or sell, not did you like Dougie McBuckets.
Buy or sell, Dougie McBuckets, one of the greatest college nicknames of all time.
Oh, easily one of the greatest nicknames of all time.
Sure.
Ever. No, I'm gonna buy it because Marquette they're playing really good basketball, and being in the Big East, it's going to be good competition throughout the rest of the year, especially in basketball. We know that's always the case when you have to face teams like Xavier and UConn, Villanova, always really, really good squads. St. John's, you find a bunch of teams that will usually be tournament teams. Butler, you go down the list of guys that teams you're gonna have to face that are gonna always give you headaches. But I think Marquette's right there at the top of that list, so I'm gonna buy it because I think they're going to continue to win. It's gonna be really fun to see where they are when that matchup specifically with Villanova comes around. and that is going to be played on the 8th of January. And so it's fairly, it's coming up here in a few weeks, but I think we'll see a Marquette team by that time that could possibly be ranked, or at least be close, depending on if they can keep winning out there. So, yeah, I'm going to buy it. I think it's looking really good. That was a solid team. That was a solid win on the road against a squad that we know can really, and we knew that coming in against Oklahoma State, can score the basketball a lot, and in a lot of different ways. They've got a couple of really good young players on that team. It was just, they ran into an Oklahoma State team that said, we're going to play defense like you've never seen. But on top of that, it was like Marquette acting as if they've never played against a zone defense. So it was a little bit of both of that there. But I'm going to buy it. I think Marquette continues to roll here. It's just something about Marquette and college basketball that goes together really, really well. And that's I think, going to be the case again this year.
Yeah, I'm going to buy it as well. There are 2 losses on the season, Oklahoma State and UCLA, and that UCLA loss was on the road.
Yeah.
That Creighton win, man, going to Omaha and beating Creighton, I mean, that, and a number 9 team Creighton, that's a really good win. They got number 7 Villanova coming up the end of the month. Seton Hall, they're not great this year, but, Seton Hall is okay. They got a tough Xavier team coming up. They got Georgetown coming up. Those are typically really tough games. St. John is typically a pretty good game. Butler is pretty decent year in and year out. So yeah, this, the Big East is going to show, it's going to give some problems to Marquette. And if they can continue to win, let's say they don't even beat Villanova. Yeah. Let's say they don't beat them, but they play them close. They play them within 10, and they're right there towards the end of the game. I mean, it's a loss, but that's something that the NCAA committee, that's something that they're going to look at, and they're going to say, you know what, Oklahoma State went on the road to Marquette and beat them, and then Marquette turned around and beat number 4 Wisconsin. They turned around and beat number 9 Creighton. They played number 7 Villanova to the end. Let's put a little more credence on that win that Oklahoma State had. And if Marquette can rattle off, 18, 19, 20 wins, hell, that's a pretty damn good season, and they're, like Lenardi said yesterday, they're already a fringe NCAA team. If they could make the tournament, man, I tell you. So yeah, I'm going to buy it. I think this win continues to pay. I think it will continue to pay dividends. Now, it's not like they knocked off Kansas or knocked off Baylor, who Baylor's going to go and just beat about everybody.
Yeah.
I think Baylor's got a chance to win an NCAA championship this year. So, but I think long term, yeah, it's gonna continue to pay off. Yeah,
it'll look really good to Lenardi and the bracket boys there when they. By the way, I just nicknamed them that myself. We'll
send them the trademark.
Yeah. By the way, TM Bracket Boys and Lenardi. It's kind of like Dan Patrick and the Danettes. Yeah. So I think it's a good idea. But yeah, that could look really good by the time tournament time and Selection Sunday comes around. Hopefully for Oklahoma State's sake, it definitely does. So all right, buy or sell with Oklahoma State football. We know the run game has been. In terms of different players we've seen break out this year, it's been like a roller coaster ride. A bunch of different guys with a bunch of different really good games on the ground. So with that being said, will Oklahoma State have a 3-man committee at running back next year? Buy or sell?
I'm going to sell it. I think no one knows what LD's going to do, but I don't know. I don't... It's kind of a toss-up, I guess. I mean, I don't know LD personally. I've talked to him a few times, but it's not like we're best friends. But I don't see LD coming back. It's possible. If LD comes back, then yes. But I don't see it happening. I think Dez and I think Dez Jackson and Dominic Richardson are going to be those 2 guys. And I think we're going to see quite a bit of Dominic next year. I think that. Going into this season, I don't know if anyone expected Dez to be as good as he was. It's tough to get a JUCO player and have him ready in a couple of seasons. But he went out there and he showed us several different running styles. We saw his power back. We saw a little bit of finesse. He's a little shifty. He can turn on the gas when he needs to. And anyone that covers or follows Oklahoma high school football knew that Dominic Richardson was going to be an absolute beast. But I can tell you right now, I don't think there's many people out there that expected him to be an absolute beast as a true freshman, So I think those two guys, I think the future of the Oklahoma State running back room is really, really bright. I think that Dez is going to be pretty solid. And I think Dominic, before it's all said and done, and I honestly think it's going to be a lot sooner rather than later, I think Dominic is going to be one of the best running backs in college football. And I think next year we're gonna see several more performances like we saw against Baylor, but I think it's gonna be two guys. And now we'll see other backs. We'll have other guys coming in for spells, but those two guys are gonna be getting the bulk of it.
Yeah, and I'm going to sell it as well because I'm with you. I don't know what LD's going to do, but you heard Frank there say he doesn't expect him to come back. Mm-hmm. And I'm probably in the same boat, to be honest, and I think a lot of that has to do with Dez and Dominic doing what they did. It's LD who comes back, and would he be the number one guy? Maybe, but he also knows it's a crowded running back position there for Oklahoma State if he does come back. So, and I hope he does. I wish him all the best in whatever he does. But
he is a broadcast journalism major.
Oh, awesome! Yeah,
and he is pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, with that personality.
Oh yeah,
makes sense
for sure. No, he's going to do well in whatever he decides to do with that. But it'll be cool to see. So, but Dez and Dominic, I mean, those two guys, while we saw limited workload from both of them in terms of total games, what they did with that was, wow. They turned it, and game workload was big, but in terms of, overall, they didn't play a lot of games like we saw with Chuba at the beginning and LD. They stepped in when called upon late in this season, and absolutely shined a bright light on the future of that position for Oklahoma State. And I think that they really do have a chance to be that 1-2 punch next year, and it's going to be a situation where if Oklahoma State sees, hey, you got the hot hand today, we're going to ride you. It's never going to be, I don't think, until maybe one separates from the other, which would take a lot with the way that they run. It's going to be Desmond's job most likely, but if Dominic comes in and then spells him and he's picking up chunk gains and isn't going down on first contact, he'll get the bulk of the carries because he's got the hot hand at that time. So it's going to be one of those situations, and as you know, teams are completely fine with having two backs that they can confidently feed the football to, in college football. So that'll be fun to watch. I'm really looking forward to that position next year for Oklahoma State. Buy or sell that the Philadelphia Eagles will win out with Jalen Hurts at quarterback? By the way, I think I skipped you, but I'm going to...
You did. I'll go 2 in a row. No big deal. What's the rest of their schedule look like?
So the Eagles have... Let me pull it up here. I should have had that ready for you to go here. The Eagles...
Well, I can read. I should have.
No, they have Arizona coming up next. Then they have Dallas. So the only 2 games they have left there.
Where's the Dallas game's in Philly, correct?
No, they're both on the road, actually.
Oh, wow. So they'll play them in Dallas twice.
Mm-hmm.
I'll sell it. I think they win one of those. I don't know which one. I could see Dallas pulling some craziness out. That's one of the biggest rivalries out there. So I could see Dallas pulling that out, but I could also see Arizona. Now they're not the same, like we've talked about the past month or so. They're not the same Arizona as they were to start the season or midway through the year. They've really struggled. This isn't the Arizona team that beat Seattle, but I could see. I'll sell it. I think that. I don't know if Jalen Hurts is going to be the future of that franchise. I don't know if he's going to win him a Super Bowl or win an MVP or be a Pro Bowler or anything like that. But he's shown that he's got it right now anyway. But I'll sell. I think they drop at least one.
Yeah, watching that game with Philadelphia, and it's big time that they knocked off the Saints. I mean, that's
sure.
Something that nobody would have thought, especially with Jalen Hurts, coming in his first actual start in the NFL. But what he did was bring a new spark to that team, which they needed. I will say this. I saw a lot of people initially, with what Jalen Hurts did, it was like, oh my gosh, he's the savior to this team. and he's just brought him back from the brink, and look, we're going to win. I mean, let's calm all that down a little bit, because did he have a good game? Yeah. But a lot of it was running the football, and that's what he does so well, as we know. And it's not like his passes were bad, but when he gets in a situation where he has to throw it a lot, that's when we'll start really judging if he has the ability to get, to do what it takes to win consistently with that team and with the limited amount of weapons. But him running the ball like he did, it opened up their run game too. They got Miles Sanders involved. He ripped off an 82-yard touchdown, I think it was, and had a huge day on the ground. It just opens a lot of things up because it forces the defense to cover more of the field than it did with Carson Wentz. So I think the Eagles are really in a good position in terms of they like what they see, and maybe we can build on this. And on the other side, it's like, oh my gosh, Carson Wentz. we just that was one of the worst deals they ever made, in terms of the money they may potentially have to eat, or have one of the most expensive backup quarterbacks in the league at this point, and maybe into next year, depending on what happens. So I'm going to, when I look at the schedule, the Cardinals, yeah, they're definitely not the same Cardinals team, and yes, they beat a somewhat hot New York Giants team, but I'm telling you, if you watch that game, the Giants played really bad, but man, the Cardinals didn't look all that great. They still didn't. I'm not convinced that they are back. I'm still not convinced. I know Kyler Murray ran the ball a lot better. He looked quicker, but he's not throwing the ball that well. He's only looking DeAndre Hopkins' way, which is fine at times, but he used to spread it out a ton. So I am really still worried about this Arizona team. I'm not sure how they handle Jalen Hurts. So I'm going to say that Jalen Hurts does beat the Cardinals in that one. And I think he can beat the Cowboys, because anybody can beat the Cowboys. So I'm going to buy that he does win out, and he ends up going 3-0 in his few starts that he gets. And it's just a shame that he probably won't get a chance near the playoffs, because I think it'd be fun to watch what he and that Eagles team did in the playoffs. So I'll buy. I think they're doable. I will say this: he may not be putting up the huge throwing numbers yet, but he's still one of the most fun quarterbacks to watch right now, because you never know when it's going to happen, but you do know that explosive play is going to happen at some point in any game.
Mm-hmm. I think we saw what OSU's bowl team is going to look like on Saturday. I don't think we see Chuba or Tylen. I don't think we obviously don't see Rodarius. He came out earlier this week.
Yep.
There's a few other guys we may or may not see, depending on if they want to try their hand in the NFL early. And it's looking more with each day. It's looking more and more like Oklahoma State's going to face Arkansas. They're not great, and it could end up being someone else, but we see OSU play in the bowl game like they did against Baylor. Buy or sell?
Yeah, I'm gonna buy it. I don't think that there's going to be a massive lack of energy or anything like that, or effort. And you know what? If it is Arkansas, that's a team that can be run on a lot. And that's what Oklahoma State's doing really well right now. I know that they threw the ball better, and Dylan Soner was a big part of that against Baylor, but they also still continue to run the ball really, really well. And I think that will be the case if they played Arkansas in a bowl game. Arkansas this year has been really an interesting team, because they have run into a lot of situations this year specifically where it was like, I can't believe they lost that game on that or that, and it just kept happening over and over. The Auburn one was brutal. I mean, absolutely brutal the way that happened this year. Mississippi State the same way. In my opinion, they kind of got screwed on both of those games. And then they played, if you look at the schedule when they dropped out in the SEC early this year, we knew them and Mizzou, they were going to have the two toughest schedules, rightfully so, against the SEC. We knew that was going to happen. So I think that it would be a team that Oklahoma State could very well beat. And your question is, will they play like they did? I think they will, and then a lot of that's going to go on Spencer Sanders too, because I think that he had a pretty good game overall against Baylor. You don't want to obviously throw 2 interceptions against an Arkansas team that will turn those into points. Baylor not so much, but Arkansas will. So if he plays like that, and minus maybe the turnovers, yeah, they're going to be fine. They're going to play just like that and run the ball all over the place. Defense, I'm not worried about, even with no Rodarius. They're still going to be big time in that game. So yeah, I'll buy that.
Yeah, I'm gonna buy it as well, because I think you're pretty spot on. I think it starts with Spencer. I think you have to be able to move the ball efficiently. You can't turn the ball over. I get that he had 2 against Baylor, but 1 I'll give him a pass on. Not great, but I'll give him a pass. But you look at there's really nothing to lose, and there was really nothing to lose last week. And so when you're playing a team that's 3-7 on the season, if it is Arkansas, you're playing a bowl game. You don't really have to worry about it. If Spencer starts to struggle, if he has a couple of turnovers, or he can't complete passes like he was on Saturday, you've got a more than capable backup on the sidelines in Shane Illingworth. And that's something that you and I had talked about yesterday. We don't know what the reason was why we didn't see Shane on Saturday. Was it because Spencer played really, really well and there was no reason to pull him? But why would they keep Spencer in the game as long as they did? Is it a let's keep our foot on the gas, there's no reason to let up kind of a deal? Kind of a revenge game. You screwed us earlier in the year. We haven't won down here in a decade, so let's just bury you. Or was Shane not ready because he hasn't practiced in a few weeks because of COVID protocol? So I'll be curious to see what that's all about. But I'll buy it. I think the defense has a big game. I think the offense plays well. I think seeing what Dominic Richardson did last week, I think gives this coaching staff a lot of confidence. And when you're an offensive line and you've got a running back that that can, when you're opening up a hole and you've got a running back that can take advantage of it and make a couple guys miss and pick up some big yardage, I think that's only going to help the offensive line. So I think you're going to get plenty of production there. And I think Spencer plays well. I think that was a really good bounce back game against Baylor. I think you give him a month, or rather a couple weeks here to really hone it in even more. And like I said, if you don't get good play from him, you've got Shane Illingworth, who can certainly use the experience. So I'll buy.
Yeah, no, I think you're right on with all that too. Hopefully, for the sake of the fan base, it ends on a high note. We come back here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. We'll round out buy or sell. Take a look at last night's wild matchup with the Ravens and the Browns. I honestly think it could be game of the year so far. One of the best games maybe we've ever seen in the National Football League, and a lot of cool storylines, funny storylines coming out of that. We're going to get to that and much more on the Afternoon Sports Drive here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network after this.
I don't wanna
It's Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster here on this Tuesday. Zach and Bennett here to handle some business. So I'm going to take a look at the Ravens-Browns game from last night. First of all, show brought to you by Ampride Travel Plaza and Perkins, intersection of Highways 177 and 33. Go check them out. They got all your dinner needs ready to go right now. So last night, it was a wild game. Absolutely wild. Back and forth, Ravens-Browns. And I knew it had potential to be, one of the top games of the week, this weekend slate and into this week. I thought the Steelers, Bills, yeah, that's who it was, would be the top one, and it didn't necessarily disappoint by any means. But man, this one of the best games of the year, if not the best. And I say that because if you watch that game, it was pure, sport. That was what we used to see all the time. And it just felt good to see a really back and forth classic NFL game. That's sports right there. And it feels like we haven't seen, something like that since the pandemic started with sports, and it was just good to see. It had that different feeling about it. But it had a little bit of everything. The best part, we're in the fourth quarter and Lamar Jackson heads out, right? He's not on the field. And the sideline reporter at ESPN, they go down to her, they're like, hey, where the heck is Lamar Jackson? And she's like, oh, I'm trying to trying to find him. I asked the sideline, I asked the Ravens, and they're like, yeah, he's in the locker room. He's got cramps. He's cramping up pretty bad, and then his return is questionable. So everybody's like, oh man. Trace McSorley had to come in. And while he did manage to beat the Steelers earlier in the year, I'm not sure how excited everyone was to see him against a Browns team that would ultimately give him trouble. And they did. He got a knee injury. So when that happens, we also see tunnel footage, under the seats of Lamar Jackson. He's jogging into the locker room. He's jogging. So it's like, okay, I don't know how cramped up he is. Now, I'll say this. It was a somewhat familiar-looking jog because we've all seen that type of jog before. So, of course, what does everybody speculate's going on with Lamar Jackson? Is it actually cramps? No, it's a theory being floated around there that a lot of people have jumped on, including teammate of Lamar Jackson's, Robert Griffin III, saying that he just had a case of the poops. Was basically what it was. I think that's the correct way to put it. I don't know. Maybe there's a nicer way to put that.
That was a dookie run.
Yeah, it was a dookie run. You know how you can see whenever you can tell what a dookie run is, And
that dude had his cheeks clenched.
That's what it was.
His hands were back there, and he was squaddling down that hallway. Oh, so he was prairie dog.
When he went out, I'm thinking, all right, we just saw that run. And I immediately hop on Twitter, and everyone's like, "Did you guys see that? Lamar Jackson's got to go poop." And it was so funny because he immediately came into the post game, and he's like swearing it was cramps, and responded to a random dude on Twitter about it today.
Intestinal cramps.
Yeah, exactly right. And he was like, "Guys, I didn't pull a Paul Pierce here. We all know the Paul Pierce, like grabbing in a wheelchair." And years later, Paul Pierce admits it wasn't actually hurt. He actually had pooped himself. And Archie Bradley did the same thing with the Diamondbacks. Like, he gave that story. And it made me think, how many... This has to happen more than we think to players on the field, where they're just like, or the court or whatever, they run into a situation, it's like, oh my gosh, what do I do? Do I go off, or do I just continue playing this? It was something with Lamar. Now, there hasn't been any proof or evidence that this was for sure the case besides the poop run, which leaves us to speculate. But it was pretty great because Trace McSorley gets hurt, and then here comes Lamar Jackson sprinting back out on the field and ultimately gets the fourth quarter going in the second part of the fourth quarter. He gets down the field, scores, throws a big touchdown to Hollywood Brown, who finally caught the ball because he dropped the rest of them that night, of course. But he caught that one wide open. The Browns responded, and then the Ravens came back, got into field goal position, and were able to get the final field goal and win it there against the Browns. So, but here's the same thing for me. There's always, it's the same thing remains for the Ravens. There's always going to be teams that they can run over, and I mean literally run over. Mm-hmm. Lamar Jackson had over 100 yards, and that's really incredible for a quarterback for sure. They have 2 or 3 different running backs that can make a big difference in the game. But as long as Lamar Jackson is their quarterback, they'll be good for 7 to 9 wins a season. I fully believe that. But late in the year, defenses really tighten up, and they force you to throw the football. And so this Ravens team doesn't scare me in the slightest if I'm a fan of anybody else in the AFC. And honestly, when I look at that game last night, while it was a fantastic game, Browns don't really scare me either. The question was coming in from last week, are the Browns real? Are they for real, or are they just duping us here to think that they're a good team because their record says so? You look at what Baker Mayfield did, and did he play well when it counted? Yes, for sure. And that was some of the best football he's played in a long time. But he was inaccurate, and he didn't play extremely well until he really came alive in that fourth quarter. And he's excited a lot of people these last few weeks, and I think there's a reason to be excited. But until he can play that way consistently, the Browns, to me, are basically the same team as the Ravens because they have 2 stud running backs who will run all over you. But until Baker Mayfield can throw the football consistently as well as he did in that fourth quarter, game in and game out, they're never going to reach that next level. So it was 2 teams that, to me, are right there that we saw last night. But there's better teams out there that will take advantage of what their game plan is. I also saw something pretty interesting out of that game too, Zach, was the game ultimately ended in a 5-point victory because of a safety on that hook and ladder play at the end. The ball's being tossed around all over the place, and it ends up being a safety in the end zone.
Safeties.
Yeah, well, and a lot of people were just sick over it because they took the Browns at either +3 or +4 on the spread. And so it hits at 5, and everyone's like, you've got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. Yeah, it's like one of those situations where you go, I'm never gambling again. It was so bad that FanDuel, the sports book, they announced this morning that they're actually refunding anybody that did a pre-live straight spread bet on that 3.5, or 4.5 last night, because that's how bad it was. I
don't agree with that.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever seen that.
That's a real participation trophy kind of thing.
I know. I saw that too. I was like, I don't know if I've ever seen that when it comes to sports betting.
That's called gambling.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
You go to Vegas and you bet 14 black, but it hits 15 black. They're not the dealer's not going to be like, you know what, you were pretty close. I see you're upset. Here's your $10,000 back, bud. Nah,
it's true. I mean, when I saw that, I was like, wow. I guess that's maybe a good marketing idea to get people more and more invested. Like, I want to start sports gambling. Let me jump into FanDuel because I know they might give me a refund, even though I'm sure that'll never happen again. But that was pretty interesting. It was a great game, man. It really was. And I'm not saying, look, it's funny because there's always, and by the way, Zach, it just happens to be Oklahoma fans too, typically, that always jump up and they say, okay, even when the Browns lose and Baker Mayfield happens to play well, what's the excuse this time? How is it Baker's fault? Because everybody blames it on Baker. And
you would have thought that Baker Mayfield this season is the greatest quarterback to ever step onto the gridiron.
Easily. Yeah, that's for sure. And I was like, you know what? I think he has been playing pretty well these last few weeks, and I think the loss of OBJ has actually helped that, as we talked about. But guess what? I mean, this is a team that has been hindered and has been held back by Baker Mayfield a lot. And if you look at that game, was he tough in the end? Yes. He was really, really tough in that fourth quarter, and he got that team down in under a minute to be able to tie the game, and that was awesome. But if you look at that first half of play, it's just a whole consistency thing. There's so many times, and the interception he threw was just downright awful. So, I mean, until he takes that next step, you're never going to have a Browns team that can just run over everybody and expect to win the postseason, because it just doesn't happen. The Ravens are proof in the pudding that you cannot run the ball over and over and over, especially against playoff caliber teams, because they will find a way to beat you and force you to throw it. And if you can't throw it good enough, well, then you're really in trouble. So it was a good game. I really did like everything we saw. Now I think there was a record set for most rushing touchdowns in that game. It was just insane, the amount of work that was done on the ground. But yeah, biggest story to come out of it was a poop situation for Lamar Jackson, and I think the census for most people is that yes, it really was a classic poop situation. And I hope that in a number of years, surely way down the line when Lamar Jackson's retired, he's like going to be asked that question. Okay, Lamar, really? Remember that time against the Browns? Did you poop yourself or not?
No, man, it was cramps.
Yeah, I swear it was still cramps. Okay, I do that run all the time. Yeah. Let's finish up our buy or sell here now that we're done talking about Lamar Jackson's BMs. So let's see, where were we? I think let's go with your last one here real quick. What else do you got?
Oklahoma State opens up Big 12 play tomorrow against TCU.
Yeah.
Big 12 play is going to be really tough. Again, that tip-off has been moved up to 6 o'clock tomorrow night on ESPN for those of you that can't make it and get one of those limited tickets. Buy or sell, we see Oklahoma State beat TCU to open Big 12 play.
I'm going to buy because this has been a somewhat of a inconsistent TCU team so far. 5-2 on the year, and they took a bad loss to Providence a couple games ago, where they were just simply outplayed. They were really badly out-rebounded. They turned the ball over a ton, but then they bounced back against Texas A&M and just dominated that one and won by 18 points. So they have the firepower. They're fairly decently sized in the paint. But they have shown weakness in that area too. Oklahoma State has to come in tomorrow, and they have to be ready to out-rebound this squad, because it's an Oklahoma State team that I think starting in the Big 12 for sure, they're going to feed off of second chance looks. That's not saying that they're just going to be terrible shooting the basketball, but they have a lot of guys that are scrappy enough and are crashing the boards enough and need to probably work on that even a little bit better as we get going here in the Big 12, that's going to become a big thing. You get shooters like you have on this team, like Cade Cunningham, like Isaac Likely, you go down the list, Rondell, anybody out there. I mean, Keelan Boone's been popping threes. You get them out there and you get extra opportunities and extra possessions. That's going to be big for Oklahoma State and a team that can score like they can. So, yeah, I expect them to win against TCU. If you had asked me before the season, did I expect them to come out and get a win to start off the Big 12 schedule against TCU? I might have had a different answer for you, but I'm telling you, and all of it, again, I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but they got to start quick. They got to start quick against this TCU squad, and hopefully, you catch them on one of their nights where they're on the bad side of being inconsistent.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm going to buy it as well. But I think it's going to be a similar game to what we've seen to start the season. I think we're going to see a close game where it comes down to the final 2 to 3 minutes of the ball game. But two things have to happen, or three things have to happen here. One, like you said, you got to get off to a hot start. Cade Cunningham has to go out there and he's got to put points on the board quickly. And while he's putting points on the board, he can create, for other guys. But Cade needs to go out and take control of the game pretty fast. But the two things that has to happen, they have to try to limit their turnovers. 15 to 20 turnovers in a game is going to get you beat in Big 12 play. Unless you can just cause so much disruption that you force, 12 to 15 yourself. So they got to be able to take care of the ball, especially down low and when they're driving. But they have to they got to get consistent paint play. When you get into Big 12 play, Caleb, I don't know the reason that they started Kuma over Caleb, but you look at what Kuma did. He played 12 minutes. No shot, no attempts from the field, no attempts from the free throw line, no rebounds, no assists, no steals, no blocks, 1 turnover, and 3 fouls. So you've got to get good play, and you look at what Caleb did. Caleb played 15 minutes. He was 2 of 2 from the field. He had 3 rebounds, 2 fouls, 1 assist, 1 block, and just 1 turnover. So that was a bit of a bonus. But you look at those two guys; they combined for 4 points. Though you have to get better play down low. But I still think they beat TCU. They got to be disciplined. But I think they win a squeaker.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think you're spot on with that too. It's got to come from that area, no doubt. All right, last one I have here for you. So we saw the Cleveland Indians have announced that they will be getting rid of that name coming up here in the next year. So with that being said, you buy or sell that we will see more name changes now after the Indians have done it and formerly the Washington Redskins also?
Yeah, I'll buy it. Because I agree with the Washington one. That was one that probably needed to be changed, and I'm honestly surprised it took as long as it did. Man, the Indians it's on that fence, man. It originally was just supposed to be a temporary name. Ended up being the franchise name, but I agree or disagree with it. That for me, neither here nor there. Whatever appeases the people. But I think we'll see more. I don't agree with the CBS writer or the people calling for the Blackhawks or Florida State or Atlanta to change their name. Florida State and Chicago, that's the name of the tribe, for crying out loud. Yeah. I mean, I understand the Washington Redskins. That's pretty racist, But the Blackhawks, the Seminoles, that's a tribe. Why are you trying to get them to change their name? I could see them fighting to get Atlanta to change their name, but I mean, that's not distinctively racist. So I don't know. I mean, I think you'll see it, and I think you'll see it at a lot of levels. There's a lot of people in the state they've been pushing for a while to get Union High School in Tulsa, trying to get them to change their name. They're also the Redskins. And they got pretty interesting mascot that they use every now and then. So a lot of people trying to get Union to change their name. I think you'll see colleges changing, lower end college, not lower end, but smaller division colleges, smaller schools changing their name. But there's not many high major, mid-level, high major professional teams that anymore that need to change their name. So I think you'll see it, but maybe not as high profile as Washington, and I guess probably not as high profile as Cleveland.
Yeah, I'm going to buy it because this will never end, changing the names of sports teams, of schools, of whatever, until someone stands up and refuses to do it. Because we live in a world where people and businesses are so concerned with appeasing a few people who claim to be offended by everything. A lot of it happens on social media. But I say this, make no mistake, the Redskins changed their name, and the Indians did too, because of money. Bottom line, I really think that they did it because they didn't want to if they really wanted to offend random people, why wasn't that done a long time ago? So if a sponsor threatens to leave, a big-time sponsor or multiple sponsors, which we know was the case for sure with Washington, then they get on their knees and they say, hey, we'll do whatever it takes to keep you around, and if that means changing our name, then that means changing our name. I think it's a big part of it. It just so happens today was the same day we also saw there was a school in San Francisco that is named the Abraham Lincoln High School. They're now changing their name because quote, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives didn't matter enough to him. That's what they said. So, it's never going to end until someone, and then multiple, I think it's going to take, a franchise, businesses, whatever, and we've seen it before. Heck, Eskimo Joe's is a great example. They're sitting here in Stillwater, and there was a petition out, right, to get their name changed.
Yeah.
And they stood up and said, no, we're not going to do that. And that was a big win. I thought that was a big win in the idea of a few people, being offended, and we got to fix things to appease them. It's just something that if it doesn't stop, if it doesn't stop soon, then never will. And you don't want to get on that trajectory, which unfortunately I think we're on. The Indians, look, I don't know. I feel like from what people you would always bring up, it seemed that the mascot, was more offensive than anything, or the Wahoo, whatever they use there. But the name of it, I'm like, I just don't get how the name Indians is offensive. And they claim all the time that many Native Americans have told us this. Well, okay, who are these many Native Americans? Like, can we know who they are? Is there really a bunch of them that are upset about this? I don't know. But it seems like this is something that, to me, will not get changed anytime in the near future, and we're going to see, I think, like you said, the Seminoles are probably in danger at some point. I would think that the Blackhawks probably have it coming down the pipe. Hopefully not, but maybe. And I hope the Kansas City Chiefs don't bend under that pressure either, because that's an historic name. So, and like you said, those, again, certainly are not racist in any means. So, I just, and it's not me, I'm not being ignorant to the fact. I get it. I agree. Is Redskins crossing the line? Yeah, probably so. But for crying out loud, until somebody says, hey, we're not going to do it, this is our name, we've had it forever, then it's never going to stop.
Yeah, and that's, it's a fine line, it really is. Like, Redskins is offensive. I don't see how you could argue that. But there's some, like, I don't agree with the Blackhawks or Florida State. It's the tribe, and I could understand Cleveland, but I'm not a fan of it. I think some need to change, but I think there's a lot that don't, and the social media pressure is not great.
No, it plays a big part, no doubt. When we come back here on the Afternoon Sports Drive, we're going to round out the show and tell you what we learned on this Tuesday. Is up next. Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Zach Lancaster rounding out the show here on this Tuesday. Busy show. Hope everybody enjoyed it. Show brought to you by Ampride Travel Plaza in Perkins. Make sure you check them out. Intersection of highways 177 and 33. to round out the show. Everybody knows what we're about to do, and if you're new, take a listen.
The day is coming to an end. Time to find out if these two got any smarter.
The question is, what did you learn?
Let's find out what the guys learned today on the afternoon sports drive.
Well, I learned something today.
All right, Zach, when I tell you what I learned, you're going to be like, wait a minute. Especially if you haven't learned this today, too. And it's not a joke, okay? I'll tell you ahead of time, it's not a joke. The AFC wild card game on January 10th. We all know it's going to be on CBS. But did you know, and I learned this today, it will also be simulcast on Nickelodeon. Yeah, Nickelodeon will simulcast it. And it's going to be a completely kid-friendly, kid-interactive style of broadcast. I'm not joking. It is going to involve, in the pregame show, the SpongeBob Sports Pants countdown special. You'll see a bunch of slime in the end zones. They're going to put googly eyes on players. When I read this, I was like, okay, this is a complete joke. No, it's for real. Nate Burleson used to play in the NFL. He's going to be on the broadcast. Noah Engel, I don't know who that is going to be the play-by-play man. And some show called All That, one of their stars is going to offer some sort of analysis, apparently, from the booth during the game. I just don't know where to really begin with this. I think that as far as little kids trying to watch football, is it probably, like, are there times where they probably get really distracted and don't want to, like, watch a full game? Yeah, probably so. Is putting SpongeBob out there going to get them involved and really want to watch football? I don't know, but can you believe that this is actually happening? Because it is.
Man, I don't really have a thought on this. I find it really weird.
It's kind of strange.
Man, I don't know. I can't. Yeah. Okay.
I've officially stumped Zach Lancaster.
I don't really have, like, I guess it's a good idea, but like, why is the NFL trying to get a bunch of 7 and 8 year olds to watch the NFL?
Yeah, that's kind of, of course you want to stretch your demographic, but really to that, I don't. Does it help that Von Miller will be highlighting SpongeBob's best sports moments in a pre-kickoff appearance? I mean, I don't know.
Okay, I would understand maybe like a preseason game.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But I could understand it, I guess, because it is going to be a big game. But it's just stupid, man.
AFC wild card simulcast, not just on CBS but on Nickelodeon.
You know how many dads are going to be so pissed off because they're not going to get to listen to Tony Romo predicting plays. They're going to have to see SpongeBob's ass in the uprights.
That's a good point. I mean, yeah,
because it's the dads that have to watch Paw Patrol on Saturdays instead of getting to watch College Game Day.
Well, I saw this.
And I feel so bad for that portion of people.
I saw this posted on a sports website earlier, and the message board was underneath it, and it was a dad that commented and was like, "Oh, I can't wait. My kid and I are going to sit here and watch." I'm like, "Dude, yeah, you can. Why you're not excited about this?" That's exactly what I thought.
No way you're going to sit there for 4.5 hours and watch this.
Football, especially playoffs. And can you imagine if the dads that this is their team, like if whoever's in it, it's like they've been waiting, team made the playoffs, made the wild card, but now I got to sit down and I got to watch the SpongeBob version with my kid. Oh boy, yeah, I feel for that too. I got to pour one out for those guys, man.
My God. So I learned today. Technically, I learned it yesterday, but I'm carrying it over today.
Yep.
We all know how tragic it was when we all learned the passing of Alex Trebek, the host, long time host, and probably irreplaceable host of Jeopardy. Well, for everyone that loves Alex Trebek and loves Jeopardy, they have put the Jeopardy collection on Netflix. So you get to go back and watch all the greats and enjoy Alex Trebek. And we're talking like 30 plus years of Jeopardy. So that's a lot of Jeopardy, and it's on Netflix. So I'm pretty excited about it. I watched a lot of Jeopardy when I was in the hospital, and that was the first time I'd watched it in probably 3 or 4 years. And it's a show that you kind of forget about, and then when you watch it, you're like, oh my God, dude, I love this show. And so for those of you that love Jeopardy, Alex Trebek and Jeopardy is now streaming on Netflix.
Yeah, that's really cool stuff for sure. He was, just loved by everybody. I wanted to also, before we end the show, give the quick update on Keontae Johnson, who you mentioned to me as well for the show about this, out of Florida. That was that scary moment where he collapsed on the floor the other day in the middle of a game, middle of a basketball game. He's now in stable condition. He's breathing on his own. He's speaking with his parents and doctors and FaceTiming and all that stuff. So that is really, really good news.
Absolutely.
They don't know if it's COVID related yet. They don't know what it was that caused this. And it was interesting because Joe mentioned it with us yesterday on the show a little bit. And what could it be? And if it is COVID related, that could certainly be an issue. I could see the NCAA. Well, I don't want to think about that. But you hope they can find out what that was so that never happens again, because, man, Zach, I watched that video a couple times, and that was scary.
Oh, that's incredibly terrifying, and it's certainly something you never want to see, and I'm with you. I'm so glad he's okay and on the mend, but I get a little worried thinking about if it is COVID, what's the NCAA going to do?
Yeah, that's going to be, I think a lot of teams, a lot of the NCAA, maybe college basketball is kind of holding their breath right now to see what exactly that is.
Well, and I think I think it'll have ramifications on more than just college basketball.
Oh, sure. Yeah, the sports world for sure, I think, is holding their breath, no doubt. That's going to do it for us here on the Afternoon Sports Drive. Again, show brought to you by Ampride Travel Plaza in Perkins on the intersections of Highways 177 and 33. Still got time. They're open till 11 p.m. tonight. Go get all your favorite hot, fresh deli items there and fill up. 24-hour Pay the Pump Cinex top-tier gas available as well. That's Zach Lancaster. I'm Patrick Wheeler. We'll be back here tomorrow on Wednesday with Tom Dorado. He'll join us, and we'll chop it up again here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.